All right, let's get started with some quick introductions. Brendan, do you want to just give you a 30-second overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me? Just a bit of feedback, actually. A lot of us couldn't hear very well in that last session, so might need to tweak the volume of it. Yeah, I'm Brendan Lodge. Been around the industry for a few years now. Just got appointed Regional Director, Europe and International Markets for IADA. That's a new role for me. It's a part-time role, but it's something I'm going to be throwing myself into, and you'll see that. Prior to that, 7 years at JSSI, buying aircraft.
Thank you. Marian, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your business.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marian Jancarik. I'm a director of a company called Jetron. It's a Swiss headquarter brokerage house with operational office in Central Europe. And I've been doing my job selling and buying an airplane over 20 years now. So.
Thank you. And Eric, last but not least.
Good morning, Eric Jullien. I am responsible for sales in Europe for Airbus Corporate Jets. In addition, I also have a transverse role maintaining a good relationship with the financial community. And before joining Airbus Corporate Jet, I was selling Airbus airliners and had the pleasure of having Air Malta in my accounts. And really enjoyed my time there, and it's really nice to be back.
Thank you. So we're going to talk a little bit about buying and selling of aircraft. We have an OEM perspective and two brokers on the panel. So this is going to be alternating between kind of the OEM view versus maybe trading and buying and selling aircraft in the secondary market. So Eric, let's start with you. What do you think of Trump's big, beautiful bill? I'm just kidding. We're not going to start there. They weren't prepared, so they weren't prepared for that question. Eric, you're out in the market selling ACJs. The hot new product is the 220. Tell us a little bit about the pre-owned market for ACJ. I think it's a very strong market. And in that context, what is it like selling aircraft with a long lead time for customers?
Yes, I mean, that's a specificity of the ACJ product where you do get to customize your cabin to a less extent on the 220 and to a full extent on the ACJ 319 and 320neo. So that generates longer lead time in exchange for a bespoke product. How does it reflect in terms of buyers and also the interaction with used aircraft? It's a very important question because we see the used market as a complement to our own activity in a way that a customer who doesn't want to wait, we would much prefer to helping secure a used ACJ than losing this customer to another solution. So for us, we see the brokers as an integral part of the ACJ ecosystem and not as a competitor.
How long does it take to get a new ACJ right now? If you order a 220, what's the first slot you can offer someone?
I mean, today our first ACJ slot will be green end of 26. We got quite a few discussions on that slot, and you're going to look at an outfitting with a repeat cabin that is going to take you in the second half of 27. Just one reference point, I said end of 26 for a green ACJ. For the same aircraft type in an airliner configuration, you'll be waiting until 2030-32. Okay. So just to say that we have slots because obviously an ACJ customer will not wait that long.
And if Carmen wants to order a 220 tomorrow, when can she have her 220?
We'll be looking at something around 27, 28, depending on the configuration.
Okay. So Marian, my question for you is, how do your customers feel about the situation with OEMs, the backlogs that are currently very typical? It's not unique to ACJ. I think most manufacturers are 18 to 24 to 30 months out. What do customers say about that wait time? Willing to wait, or do they go to pre-owned market now?
That is pretty much helping the pre-owned market. I mean, I have to say kind of like the one and only one important fact about the customers which we are serving is that they really are impatient. They don't want to wait. You know, if they go to the air show, they speak with their advisors, they see the airplane, and you know, next to, you know, the first question comes like, okay, so I want to fly on it. When can I get the airplane? And that really helps us when we look at the numbers coming out of the COVID, which in a certain way, you know, boosts our industry. I mean, we have to admit that the numbers we've been seeing throughout the 21, 22, 23, we haven't seen this one, and we all, you know, the whole panel right here, we've lived through the 2008 and 2009, so we haven't seen that kind of a numbers in terms of transactions, pre-owned and new, ever since 2008, 2009 crisis. So that really helps to boost the industry. And the customers, they are impatient. They want to get the airplane ASAP. So that really helps us. So looking at the numbers this year on the pre-owned market, we last year, first quarter 2024, we were something around 450 transactions. The first quarter 2025, we are at the 620 actually. So yeah, the numbers are going up on the pre-owned market, and I think Eric would confirm on the new ones as well. So it's helping. It's kind of a, you know, hand by hand. So the OEMs and us on the pre-owned market, we kind of we are on the same journey. We you know, and we like to continue that way. So we are climbing hand to hand.
Eric, how many pre-owned ACJs are available for sale today?
That's a very good question. Before answering that, I like what you say, Marian. It's healthy. The market is healthy because we see as well a lot of used ACJ transaction. And today you have a handful of 318s that are coming in and out of the market. But if you're looking at a NEOS, everything has been gone in an eye blink. And we've had a couple of ACJ CEOs that were as well committed. So maybe you'll have a handful of aircraft, no more. Handful of aircraft for a fleet that is 140 pieces. So you see it's a very low in percentage.
Al, why don't you put a Slido up and see what the audience thinks is a reasonable time to wait for their UBO/corporate chieftains to wait for a new delivery aircraft, because we hear this all the time that waiting 2 years is just not going to work. But we also see people planning around that with maybe an interim solution, finding a way to get to that aircraft and recognizing they need to plan out. So what does the audience think? Is it if you're selling new aircraft, you need to deliver in 3 to 6 months? You have to deliver in 12 months, 18? What is tolerable for the people that you interact with? Brendan, coming to you, what are your customers saying about delays? What are they willing to tolerate?
I think the issue with delays is it's always been there. It just got a bit better after the global, credit crisis, but then it started to stretch out again. And so I think, the two things that they care about. One is obviously how long is it going to take, but then what are they going to do until they get that aircraft? So that again comes back to the pre-owned market. So.
And I'll come to you in a second, Eric. I see different behavior from different OEMs. Some OEMs are purely focused on selling that new aircraft. Other OEMs think very much about a pre-owned, get the customer into the family, and then maybe down the road we'll sell them a new aircraft. What's your view of the OEMs, and do you see that difference, and how would you explain that?
That's a good question. I think, I'm not as close to maybe a couple of the OEMs as I am to, say, Textron or who, they work very hard on, getting their owners into the brand, and then they have a succession of aircraft to offer them. I'd probably pass that one on to Marian, to be honest.
All right, Marian, what do you think? Do you perceive a difference between OEMs as to their desire to sell new versus trying to create a solution and get somebody into an aircraft now?
I would probably differentiate between OEM, they have a large cabin. The large cabin, I would say they want to have you in a family, and without really pointing a finger, that those they producing a smaller cabin, they just want a transaction. So they just carry on at all costs, just get a number, get a number.
Okay. Loic, I think he's talking about you. Eric, you had a comment.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go back on the timing issue. I mean, not to do any to semantics, but we're not talking about delays. This is lead time. This is a normal industrial process to customize a bespoke product. And yes, there are customers who don't want to wait, but I will compare that to high-end real estate or the yachting industry. When you commit a high-value asset that is really personalized to your taste, some customers are prepared to wait, and that's our customers. Obviously, somebody who's coming and saying, my global is in a major overhaul in 6 months, what can you get for me? I mean, unfortunately, that's not
realistic. Yeah, and I think the audience has put their finger on it. A year to 18 months is a very realistic time for a bespoke asset, a high value asset. You're not going to build these things to have them sitting in an inventory. That's not realistic, and also not a good dynamic for the industry. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about what's working, what's selling, what's not selling, more on the pre-owned side, and Eric, welcome to chime in on the ACJ front. But Brendan, what are your customers looking for, and what are they not looking for right now?
I think the differentiation comes, and I think you've also got to look now at the American market is becoming more isolated, and things are happening differently there. But here in Europe, we've got quite a lot of demand for smaller aircraft at the moment, and there's quite a lot of demand for smaller aircraft coming out of Brazil at the moment for some reason. And then the mid-size is slow, and then large cabin, long range is still going pretty well, but the newer ones.
Newer ones. And Marian, anything different on that view?
No, that's. I would just echo Brendan. That's pretty much it. So the leader right now, it's a large cabin and light, very light entry level. That's what is now driving the market. The mid-size, super mid-size is kind of a frozen for the moment, if I may say so.
And can you name specific models that are very popular right now in the smaller segment?
From the smaller one, the 525 series from Jetron, by all means, and Phenom 300, Phenom 100. Those are really the best sellers. Although it comes again a little bit with when it comes to Embraer with the leading time of a new one. So they you wait 24 plus months for the P300. So that kind of generates the demand and the movement on a pre-owned market.
And are you seeing anything surprising you on price points? Is it an equal buyer and seller market, or are you seeing tension in Phenom 300s and the prices are really high, for example? What's surprising you in the market on pricing?
The steadiness, I would say, and maybe a little bit of increase on the large cabin. That surprised me a lot. And on the small ones, the prices are fairly steady. We don't see any bumps up and down on the light jet cabin. What actually I would add to Purvis' question, like what else is there a little bit different from previously what we've seen, is that the people are now looking towards more younger vintage airplane. And that we haven't seen this one prior. The prior was like, okay, well, so I'll look at the 15 years old, that's big, So I'll look at the 5 years old, whatever. It's just budget driven. That was a past. Right now, the people are more looking into the younger vintages. It is partially, when we do our own research and our guys, they're putting together the statistics for our clients. The important point what is coming out of it is that there are tremendously long lead times at the maintenance facilities. And again, I don't want to be any bad or fellow MROs. We like them and work with them very closely, but they face the same challenges. So they reach out to their suppliers with the spare parts, and it's just ongoing process. So the people. Short answer to that is that the customers are now looking for the younger vintage airplane, so not to spend substantial time on ground with the maintenance facility because they feel the fear of the spare part shortage and staffing shortage.
That's a very sophisticated insight from your customers. Does that mean that these are not first-time buyers mostly? Sorry, Brenda. Sorry, we are strong in Central Europe, and we kind of grew with the market when we established it.
And the customers, I mean, Czechoslovakia, I don't know if any of you knew the history there, one of the former or post-communism countries around Europe, and the business aviation market was very, so to say, very just baby market. We had in 2000 we had 4 business jets there, so it was nothing. And all of a sudden, when the business, all the curtains opened and the business was spread around in Germany and everything was all together, the business jet market grew up right now to the size of what we have 90 business jets, around 40 turboprops, which is probably 50% of Switzerland, for example, which is substantial. Like Switzerland, that's well-established business jet market. So the customers buying the airplane in the region are young fellows. They've been growing with the market, and we seeing more these people just upgrading an airplane rather than being a first-time buyers there. So they are upgrading, they are educated, they are very nice, they understood what are the mimics of the business jet market, and they are educated. That's the answer, yes.
Brendan, you want in on this?
Yeah, I was just going to add a couple of things. One is, the last 7 years I've focused on buying in quite a number of globals, and we looked at a number of other large cabin aircraft. And I have to say, I think the opposite is going on in that market. I think where you're seeing the large cabin newer aircraft holding their value quite well, the older globals particularly were falling quite rapidly since the peak of the COVID. There's still high price compared to before COVID.
And is that unique to the maintenance requirement for an older global, or what's happening?
Well, I mean, one of the main drivers for people when they're looking at an old global is when is the 240-month inspection due, and that can, I've heard horror stories of that being as much as 3 million, and I've heard, minimum 2 million for that inspection. So it tends to make buyers nervous. And the other market, which I think we haven't mentioned, I think is going quite well, and I'll see if Marian agrees with me on this, but is the turboprop market.
Before we go to that market, I want to focus. You both said that the top end of the market is pretty strong. Eric, when you're out there selling an ACJ 220, you're trying to pitch this aircraft against a 7500 or a 700 or an 800 or a 10X. Talk to us about what your customers are looking at when they make that comparison. How is ACJ winning in that? How are you not winning in that? Talk to us about that competition.
I'd be happy to do that. Just before that, I'd like to give a bit or highlight from our end on the secondary market and the kind of flow of transactions that we saw, and then I will answer your question. What is very interesting for us is the last transaction, that's about 3-4 units. They were all predominantly going from mainland China into the Middle East. For 2 big reasons. First of all, a lot of Chinese owners disinvesting from their asset and recovering the equity from the aircraft. And that was more like not really like a financial decision, but more because they had to do that for other local and maybe political reasons. And the Middle East that is not keen on waiting for an aircraft. So both of these conjunct created very good transaction at excellent pricing levels, and that matches as well on new aircraft sale. Now to go back to your 220 question, that's really interesting because before that, when we had the ACJ, and we still have the ACJ 319 and 320neo, it's ACJ versus BBJ competition. So it's something that we know well from our airline days, and that's a devil, so it's quite straightforward. The 220 on the pricing point, we are positioning that on par with the 7,500, the 700, 800. So we are really, and that was confirmed to me recently by one of my competitors who's working on the European market as well. He also said he's encountering more and more the 220 in this sales campaign, whereas if you look at it objectively, today there is a select. One day if the MAX 7 is certified, there will be the select trying to be in that segment, but we kind of in a segment on our own. And to answer your question about what are the key competitive factors, it always boils down to the 220 is a hybrid between a bizjet and a bizliner, so it always boils down to we're bringing capacity we are bringing a range that is intercontinental range, but of course, the BizJet and sometimes the pilots, if a story is about flying 51,000 feet, whenever they do it is another question, or is about speed, how they use it, again, is debatable, but a lot is about perception. So at the end of the day, it is the typical argument. Are you mentally prepared to look at a large cabin aircraft with the benefit it brings you in terms of quality or travel, or are you still into the traditional business aviation scheme where you're looking at a smaller cabin that could take you further and faster, but again, how many times are you using that?
Yeah. Just curious, in the audience, could you raise your hand if you've been on a 220 at any of the shows or seen it at Static? Who's been on a 220? So maybe only 20% of the audience. Interesting.
So
okay, there's
some
an
work to be done
there's
here.
an opportunity. Would ACJ support a static display E-base alternative in Malta? Do you have an official position on that?
I heard that earlier. I like the idea because of the logistics that are fantastic. Our big point is what we are really interested in is to show the aircraft to the ecosystem, of course, to show as well the aircraft to potential owners. The big question mark will be would Malta be a destination for owners as well? Because obviously there wouldn't be many based here, so that's a big question mark.
Yeah.
But in principle, from a logistics location, it's not a bad idea.
Interesting. Al, we should probably open up for anonymous questions from the floor. Let's come back. Brendan put his finger on turboprops. Marian, are you seeing hot turboprop market as well? Is this something you're seeing?
Absolutely, yeah.
What's driving that?
It's kind of like a renaissance of the turboprops.
Yeah.
They've been prior COVID. They've been always looked after like, oh yeah, I don't really like it. You know, it's got this little funny thing over there, so I just like a jet. But all of a sudden, the shortage of available airplane during the COVID time kind of brought them back to life.
Right.
And now we're seeing a lot of King Airs. You know, transactions are happening on all sides of the King Airs. We're seeing obviously Pilatus. We're seeing Jetron investing in a single prop airplane, which is substantial. That's not cheap and not easy to do that. To join the crowd over there, so we're really seeing a lot of interest back in the turboprops. Although when we advising a client, we kind of make a warning that it's not as cheap as it used to be, and basically turboprop can be very similar or almost identical when it comes to the cost to the entry level or light jet from the jet.
From a total cost perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. But they the market seems to be now loving them. Yeah.
Brendan, come back to you. You made a comment. You said the U.S. is kind of off on its own, becoming its own little market. What's driving that? Is it tariffs? Why you say that?
The word I'd use is uncertainty.
Yeah.
And it's uncertainty of, if, and we've been seeing American buyers now coming into Europe, American brokers seeing Europe as a happy hunting ground, and this has been going on for years, and all of a sudden that stopped. And it's driven by uncertainty in terms of, what if I buy my airplane and it ends up at the border and there's a 2 million tariff on it. And I think it's not a clear and cut and dried situation. And I spoke to a couple of lawyers in the States before doing this panel just to get my head around it completely. And it is all down to that uncertainty.
So Marian, are your customers asking you explicitly what is the tariff situation for this aircraft? Is this question number 2 when you look at an aircraft?
It's not specifically like a tailor to the tariffs. When we launched the campaign, we always prepare the target audience and the market we're going to reach out to for the specific unit which we're selling. And since a couple of months ago, we had to add that yes, this particular airplane XY usually would be really strong in the U.S. market, but because the U.S., as Brendan said, the U.S. broker, they simply stopped coming to Europe to pick up the airplane. We have to say yes. This should have been 3-4 months ago. We would have been targeting the USA. Right now, unfortunately, we're going to avoid it, and we're going to look for market number 2, 3, and 4. So yeah, we're pointing out this one. Obviously, we don't say that it's a tariff and it's a Mr. Trump, but everybody knows that that's the case right now. So.
I mean, what I would say is I don't see this as good for the market, because we still have a situation where 2/3 of the biz jets and privately owned turboprops are in the USA. And, you know, if the two markets go their separate ways, I think it's going to make it harder to sell.
Yeah, a bifurcated market wouldn't help any of us. It would reduce liquidity and change economics across markets. Let's touch on, there's a theme emerging that younger is better. It's a maintenance question typically, and timing is what you're saying, Marian. What mandates would you say are bad mandates for selling? At what age is an aircraft becoming unattractive now for you to take a mandate to sell an aircraft?
Definitely those they are approaching a maintenance or overhaul. So if you have an airplane right now which is in a cycle where there's a 96 months inspection, 144 months inspection, or in a Bombardier product 10 years or 60 months, just down at the corner, the people are just afraid of a ground time. And again, before that, whenever the airplane was covered or the engines were covered by the programs, this was kind of like a magic formula that I've got a program on the engine, so I'm totally safe. So I can just, bump to the time where I need to change the engines. I call the provider. I get the new rental engine. My engine goes somewhere. I don't know where. I don't care. All of a sudden, they called me up. In 6 months, my engine is back. I'll switch it back, and I'm flying. Right now, this is not as easy as it sounds. And whenever we have a situation where there is a I don't know, let's say in 300-400 hours the engine overhaul on the hard time engines, or we feel like on a on condition basis that could be a time that the engine would go off. The targeted audience is very cautious, because although they say, yeah, you covered with the engine program, but these days you never know. The provider won't give you the spare engine, so I'll buy an airplane, I'm through the PPI, take the delivery, and I just ground the airplane because I don't have a spare engine. So
Spare engines are not an issue for the ACJ, I assume, Eric?
In general, no, because you go to VRN spares. Of course, you'll get a spare part that is going to have more hours than your aircraft, but then you can do double exchange. So it is obviously less of an issue for this type of aircraft.
My guess is probably the best 14 or 15-year-old aircraft mandate in the market would be an ACJ right now. There's a good demand for that age of aircraft, right?
I mean, for a discerning buyer who understands what he's getting, obviously, because based on the airliner, I mean, the worst ACJ, you're going to have 8,000 hours on it. I mean, that's an aircraft that has a design service goal that has been extended several times. We now must be above 100, maybe 120,000 hours. So it's not an issue. And then what we see often as a pattern as well is for the traditional business jet, the owner will try to sell at the end of a warranty period because he expects his maintenance cost to shoot up. Whereas here for us, you're going to be in a honeymoon effect for the maintenance cost for I would say the first 10 years, then you're going to have another plateau for another 10 years, and the aging is going to kick in around 20 years. So age is obviously
not
much
really
less
an
of an
issue for
issue.
your class of aircraft, right? So Brendan, I would like you to respond to the question that's popped up here on the Al's poll. Is the market turning? Are you feeling a downturn coming or a steady state?
I've monitored the new aircraft arrivals on Amstat for the last 7 years, and not since I finished working for JSI in December, but it went up and up and up every quarter, substantially. So 8% sounds about right to me. I haven't looked recently, but yeah, I mean everything's been going up at a very slow pace, but it's been going up. Yeah. And the other thing that is quite noticeable, and we all get the junk mail from all the brokers. Okay, previously it was we're looking for this, we're looking for that. Right now it's price reduction, price reduction, price reduction.
First to sell, right?
Yeah. So then there's you can tell that the tone of the market is shifting to it feels like it's at the top and perhaps, starting to look like the values are going to start dropping.
So Marian, if I put a gun to your head and I said Jetron had to risk its business by buying an inventory aircraft naked, and you had to spend somewhere between 10 and 20 million bucks, what model would you buy right now? Gun to your head.
Phenom 300E.
A 300E, okay. There you go. Any other questions from the audience? Let's see what we have here. Malta 9 Hotel or NREG? Higher price than B. Higher price than B for sure. Any difference between 9 Hotel and November? In Valley? I don't think there is right now. Right?
I would personally say no. Malta's obviously an EASA regulated register, and NREG is probably the leading register, and they're very compatible.
Right.
And changing aircraft between the two registers has never been a big issue. But if you draw a comparison with, say, one of the African registers, or
sure,
you might have a difference.
Now, Eric, is the parade of available metal in ACJ land coming out of Greater China ending, or are there still some aircraft to maybe migrate from that market?
Maybe not necessarily from China, but because of a lack of aircraft on the used market, we are keeping touch with the owners who might want to put aircraft on the market, not necessarily in China, because as I said before, it's always interesting for us to have a couple of good used aircraft that we can push as well. So we are looking at a couple of opportunities, but it would be no more than a couple of units. I mean, we really don't see suddenly the market putting like 5 or 10 aircraft on the market in one go.
As to this question, I don't think anybody will be brave enough to say exactly what the case is. It seems to be changing every day, and I do think, however, that there's more to be learned about where the EU settles in on tariff. I think it's going to be some kind of reaction as to where it falls out vis-a-vis coming in, what's going out. So we'll have to watch. Let me completely. Would you buy an inventory aircraft today? I don't know if that's the right question for this audience, Al. Let me change gears here. Let's talk about what brokers are being paid to sell aircraft or to buy aircraft. What is compensation to you in the market these days? You're going to tell me it's not high enough, of course. What do you get paid for selling a Phenom 300E?
Well, minus 14% right now because the dollar is completely down. So
right.
We just lower our fee, guys. So hurry up.
But so if somebody walked into your offices and said, "I want you to sell my Phenom," what is the fee structure for Jetron right now?
What is a straightforward deal? We don't have any maintenance issue. The airplane is not so stranded with a financial institution. It's straightforward. It's going to be percentage,
yeah.
And airplanes which moves quickly, it's straightforward. So a certain percentage from the value of the airplane, we know what we're going to spend on a campaign. We know what we're going to spend on a travel and so on and so on. So that's straightforward, and when it comes to the little bit older equipment, and for example, the airplane is still sitting in the maintenance, undertaking some upgrade, for example, changing avionics and stuff like that, and we know that this is going to be a long process. It might vary because there is a loan from financial institution and XY inputs in, and it's actually going to require a lot of our men work to facilitate the transactions. We would go with a flat rate fee for that. So.
Brendan, any thoughts on whether fees are going up or down in your market?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think you've got to actually look at where the market is, the size of the transaction, because typically, if you've only got something that's selling for 1.5 million, you're going to see a much higher fee on that in the percentage terms to one that's selling for 30 million or 40 million. American brokers particularly have tended to be a bit less in terms of the fees they charge. And particularly the ones specializing in the older aircraft. And then, you just get a whole selection of, when you pitch for an aircraft and you think, right, we're going to try for a 2% fee on this, you hear very quickly that someone else has offered one. So it's a very hard one to get a definitive answer on, in my opinion.
Let me ask you, do either of you do back-to-back transactions?
No, never.
Brendan?
Through Tangmere, they would consider it, but
Right.
I'm not aware of one that's been done so far.
Right. Marian, you only take exclusive mandates for buying or selling an aircraft, correct?
Very, very easy, very straightforward formula. When we step foot in the business, we said, look, we're gonna do much fewer transactions, but they're gonna be solid and valid transactions. So we always ask for the exclusive mandate to buy an airplane, or the same when somebody owns an airplane wants to sell it. So we take the exclusive listing on the airplane.
Right.
Simple as that.
I'll add to that. I mean, I wouldn't waste my time if it's a multi. You know, the idea that hordes of brokers all trying to sell your aircraft is better than one working in your common interest is a very ridiculous idea. And anybody who gets involved is going to make money out of it. And the more people involved, the more they're going to expect. So.
And Eric, I assume nobody's pulled a back-to-back on an ACJ before?
No, I don't see no, not that I can think of.
Right. Any other questions from the audience, please? Okay. All right, well, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.